Okay, I'd like to ask everyone to please take their seat.
But you can start.
Okay. Oh, look at that camera angle. You can...
Love the camera. I look the best in these cameras. I wish I could have this camera at home.
It's 580 in this moment, yeah.
I'm taking a picture of myself.
Want me to do
I'm sure they could do it.
I can come around and do it.
They can probably screen capture. Do you guys?
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of Finance and Corporate Services Committee. We will get right into it. Could I get a mover for the consent items? Moved by Councillor Johnston. Any questions? Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, can I take 3.2 out of consent, or do I have to get that approved, or?
Sorry, just give me 1 second here.
3.2.
You mean 3.2?
Yeah,
The public art?
yeah.
Certainly. So motion's been made to remove item 3.2 from consent. Those in favor? Oh, apologies, I got to do this. Hang on a second here. Okay. Those in favor? And opposed? Okay, and Councillor Ioannidis? Sorry, Councillor Ioannidis is joining us remotely, so we're just waiting for him to be able to vote. Oh, there you are. In favor. Very good. Okay, Councillor Chapman, question, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say a big thank you and congratulations, first of all, to Agnes and Michelle for being chosen to install this piece of art at the Mill Courtland Community Centre. And a big thank you to the other artists who submitted, took the time to make submissions. And I was on the jury, and it was a very interesting process. So I also want to thank staff for Andrea and Eric for leading the process. And it was I think it's one of the first times that process has actually been carried out in the way that we did it. So it was an honor to be part of that. And I look forward to the creation and installation of Swoop. If you haven't seen the artwork yet, it's really quite impressive, and it's very community. There's a lot of community engagement involved in bringing it together. So thank you to all those involved.
Thank you. I do not see anyone else in the queue, so so Councillor Johnson has moved all of the consent items, so I would ask those in favor and opposed, and Councillor Ioannidis. In favor. Very good. Carried. So we will move on to item 5.1 of the discussion items, the municipal newcomer strategy, and I believe Elan Milag-Silk will be kicking it off. Ellen, good afternoon.
Okay, so we're here today to talk about the scope and development approach to the municipal newcomer strategy. So in terms of the presentation focus, we normally don't come to council at the beginning of a project like this, but given the interest that we've seen so far on this project as a strategic plan item, we wanted to provide an update to council as things are now well underway on the strategy development plan, and to give council an opportunity to provide high-level feedback on the scope and approach to the development of the strategy. And so I will also mention that as we are further along in the community engagement phase of the project, members of council will have several more opportunities to provide suggestions, input, and feedback on what we're hearing from the community, especially as recommendations that will comprise the strategy are being drafted. So in terms of why this strategy is important to the city, first, the development of this strategy was identified by a citizen committee through engagement that was being completed for the city's strategic plan and aligns with the strategic priority of fostering a caring community, or fostering a caring city together. And given the significant increase in immigration numbers from 2016 to 2021 in particular, it makes sense for the city to turn our attention to this population, as newcomers make up 30% of our population of the city of Kitchener, and newcomers are an asset to our community and the Kitchener economy for a number of reasons. So first, in terms of the numbers, so on the screen here are the immigration trends. A quick snapshot of recent immigrants arriving in Kitchener for the last 3 census dates. And as you can see, so these numbers represent the 5-year increments between census data collection. And as shown, the numbers have doubled between 2016 and 2021 after remaining stable between 2011 and 2016. And this is where the overall population of Kitchener went from 26% being born outside of Canada to 30%, which is where we're at now. And the data trends indicate that this number will continue to go up. As I mentioned, the numbers have been increasing since 2021 for a number of reasons. Global events post-2021, I mean, since it's 2025 now, there has been a number of things that have also increased immigration numbers, such as refugee influx from Syria, the Ukraine, Rohingya majority areas, and significant increase in immigration numbers from India and Eritrea specifically, and an increase in the number of international students coming to Kitchener, although those students or those numbers aren't actually reflected in the immigration stats, but have had a significant impact. So beyond immigration trends, the newcomer population is quite a huge asset to our community and also to our economy. And as seen on the slide here, there's a number of different reasons for that, one of which is entrepreneurial potential. So more than 1 in 4 entrepreneurs in Canada are owned by, or enterprises in Canada are owned by immigrants, for instance. 71% of recent immigrants in Kitchener have employment income. And in terms of workforce contribution, newcomers often fill talent shortages and workforce gaps. And there's also significant evidence indicating that economic independence is quite high with immigrants. And they are a young and growing workforce in terms of average age. So the average age of newcomers is 29.9 compared to the overall Kitchener population of 39. So those are just a few of the reasons why this is such an important project for the city of Kitchener. So I'm going to turn it over to Ola Misha. She's the project manager for the Municipal Newcomer Strategy, and herself brings quite a bit of experience in this area, both prior to starting at the city. She started in January of this year, but also is a newcomer herself. So I'll turn it over to you, Ola.
Welcome.
Like Ellen said, I'm a newcomer myself. And so the purpose of this strategy is to enhance the quality of life for newcomers by improving access to the city's services and facilities. Services and, sorry, point of services and facilities and supports to foster economic prosperity, cultural inclusion, and active community participation. In terms of the scope, we would like to prioritize the experiences of newcomers who have arrived in Kitchener, in Canada, over the last 10 years, and also would like to focus on opportunities within the city's jurisdiction, just so we can deliver something that's truly actionable. In terms of prioritizing the experience of newcomers who have arrived in the last 10 years, it's because this aligns with the perspective of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada regarding how people settle at different times. Another perspective is the fact that there was COVID in June 2020. COVID started not in June, but there was COVID, and that some people arrived right before then, some people arrived during COVID. I am one of those people, and that has truncated the settlement journey for many people. Just also moving on, so some of the things that will be in scope would be direct programming, informational materials, engagement practices, and some out-of-scope items would be regional responsibilities, federal and provincial immigration policies, credential recognition, and education systems. Regarding the approach for this project, we want to deliver something that's based on community engagement. So we will be conducting comprehensive engagement with newcomers and newcomer-serving organizations. We'll also be utilizing research, demographics, and best practices. We're also ensuring that we're learning from other municipalities based on frameworks that have worked across Canada. And another thing is we want to prioritize internal alignment because staff are already doing so much amazing work and work that aligns with this work. So we're trying to ensure that we're working together to so that we're more responsible with the use of resources. And lastly, we'll be putting together a working group to ensure collaborative governance. And this working group will be made up of people who are newcomers themselves, representatives of newcomer-serving organizations, and staff members at the City of Kitchener. Lastly, in terms of deliverables, we would have a comprehensive summary of themes and priorities from engagements. We would have a summary of research that we have conducted. We already started doing all of that research, and all of this will be available by June 2025. And in early 2026, we intend to have the municipal newcomer strategy and an actionable implementation framework. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do have some people in the queue, actually, if you don't mind, I will get you to hold off on questions until, because we do have a delegation coming up, but thank you for that presentation. So I would now ask Tara Bedard from the Waterloo Region Immigration Partnership, if she'd like to come up and make her presentation. Good afternoon, Ms. Bedard. As you may be aware, you have 5 minutes to make your presentation. There's about 30 seconds left. You'll hear one tone and then a final tone once your 5 minutes is up, okay?
All right.
Whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Davey, Mayor Verbanovic, and City Council. My name is Tara Bedard, and I'm the Executive Director with the Waterloo Region Immigration Partnership. For those of you who do not know the Immigration Partnership, it is a region-wide collaborative of over 70 immigrant and community service, business, municipal, post-secondary, and ethnocultural organizations and other groups who are working together to create the conditions for immigrants to succeed and help build a thriving community for everyone in Waterloo Region. Our partners come together through a leadership council and a couple of steering groups aligned to our strategic pillars for this region focused on settle, work, belong. Later this week, we are celebrating 2 milestones. It is the 15th anniversary of the work of the Immigration Partnership in Waterloo Region and also the conclusion of our 5-year strategy for building community through immigration. We're also going to be soft launching at that event the next iteration of our collaborative regional strategy for supporting immigration. Over the years, there has been significant change when it comes to supporting immigrants in the region through the work of the Immigration Partnership and many community partners across Waterloo Region, including the City of Kitchener. There is stronger capacity for change because of dramatically increased awareness of immigration, immigrant experiences, and the needs of the community. There is significantly improved collaboration and partnerships, referrals, and more responsive services across public, private, and nonprofit spaces that are supporting immigrants to settle, work, and belong. We have built strong capacity for successfully coordinating large-scale refugee response events. We have more inclusive public spaces and events and increased investment in regional programs and services which support immigrants. And immigrants themselves and grassroots organizations have a stronger voice in community decision-making. For 5 years ago, our then chair of our Immigration Partnership Council, Perry Karam, delegated to the City of Kitchener Council to introduce the Immigration Partnership's last strategy, which we're wrapping up right now. She expressed appreciation for the City of Kitchener staff who are engaged in the work of the Immigration Partnership, and she invited the City of Kitchener to continue to be informed leaders in welcoming, including, and engaging immigrants, to continue participating in the work of the Immigration Partnership, and to partner with groups like the Immigration Partnership and others in the community in developing anti-racism strategies. Since then, much has happened. City staff have continued to engage in the Immigration Partnership's collaborative work. We participated, along with other community organizations and residents, in the Kitchener Mayor's Task Force on Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. The city has made numerous changes that our partners have been very appreciative of, including, for example, the rollout of your interpretation and translation services, the adoption of your Access Without Fear policy, and other things. The city's decision to develop a municipal immigration strategy is an extension of these efforts and a commitment to intentionally support the success of immigrants. We are pleased to see this commitment to continue to build capacity for change across city services made explicit, and have been supporting the staff leading this work with data, connections, and advice. We encourage the City of Kitchener to closely align this municipal immigration strategy with the goals and objectives of the new regional immigration strategy that we are about to launch for Waterloo Region. It has been developed based on the input of thousands of immigrants and in collaboration with over 100 community partners from the City of Kitchener and our other regional communities. Our close alignment will ensure the best use of resources that we have available across the city and the region. It will help us to reduce overlap and confusion in outreach and engagement across our communities. And it will allow the city to work forward in step with community partners who are involved in the Immigration Partnership towards our shared regional vision and goals for building community through immigration. Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm assuming everyone that's in the queue now has questions for Ms. Bedard. So we'll begin with Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Davey, and thanks, Ms. Bedard, for coming in today. I'm so impressed with the work that you do, that you've been working with chambers and all kinds of different initiatives in the community. It's really, really great work. I'm wondering if you can maybe comment, in the new regional strategy that you're working on, is there a focus at all on youth, and what would that be?
So,
Youth employment, I guess, yeah.
yeah, we do work that is youth-focused, but a lot of the work that we do is really focused on families as a whole. And so a lot of the work that our partners are doing in the services and supports that they are trying to develop are family-oriented. But some of the engagement work that we do is involved with engaging youth and trying to understand how the needs of youth in immigrant families and communities are maybe different from what we hear when we're looking at the family as a whole, so that the organizations that we're working with in the community are able to develop responsive services and supports for youth. We don't have a youth-specific immigration strategy, but we're definitely talking about the experiences of all of the different types of individuals in the newcomer community.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. I spent a lot of time at the Victoria Hills Community Center, and the number of youth that are there, and how they're supporting their families, right? Oftentimes they're, helping to translate for family members, helping with computer work and things, and also financially sometimes supporting the family. That I think it's great to look at how we integrate them as well into that. So it's good that you're looking at it as a whole and also, thinking about that piece as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the work that you do. I just wanted to know, how do New Canadians find you, or the services that you provide, or the other organizations that you collaborate with? Like, do you have proactive outreach or recruitment strategies, or do they just have to find you?
Yeah, sorry. Through the chair. I forgot that last time. We're actually hoping that immigrants who are in the region are finding the organizations that we're working with. As an immigration partnership, we don't actually develop and deliver services directly to newcomers. We are working with organizations and businesses and others in this community to help them be responsive to the needs of the changing population. So what we're really trying to help do is make sure that the people who are coming into this community are able to find the partners that we're working with who are developing and delivering services directly to them. And so we do that through a lot of promotional channels and social media engagement to help increase the reach of the communications that the organizations that we are working with who do the direct service are able, so that we can help to expand their reach.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Verbenovich.
Thanks very much, and thanks, Tara, for coming in and for all the good work that you're doing. And I'm encouraged to sort of hear your comments, and I know that you've had a lot of dialogue with our staff as well. And what we want to do is find that sweet spot, kind of like we did with our our housing strategy, which we'll be, interestingly enough, talking about later today, where we carved out a piece for the city of Kitchener that wasn't being filled by others, and I think we want to do the same here. I guess my question to you is, knowing sort of what you do and what others do, and knowing what's being proposed here, is there still anything that's missing that in a perfect world we would include and want to do that we may want to consider as we deal with this?
Through the chair, I don't know that I can comment on what is missing, but I would say, the whole intention of the work of the Immigration Partnership is to create capacity for change, because we know that change is needed everywhere in order to best support the newcomers who are coming into our community and build better communities and services overall for everyone. And so I think, kind of working closely together, and like we have worked with city staff over the years, and as I mentioned, there have been a lot of changes that are supportive of the newcomer population. I think, the city's intention to look across all of its services and how they are developed and delivered to meet the needs of a changing population is really important. And, ideally, every one of our partners is doing that, while also looking at kind of the broad regional strategy that we have to see how does what we do as an organization, for example, here at the City of Kitchener, help to feed into that broader strategy and help to achieve those goals overall. So I think, change is needed everywhere, and I think there's a lot that can be built on at the City of Kitchener.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Mayor Verbenovich actually asked a question that I was similar to what I was going to hone in on, and that is, in your experience, have you seen, and I'm understanding that within the report, it clearly says the first thing that our staff are going to do are try and identify gaps and minimize redundancy. But I guess I sort of see at this early stage, obviously, either there are gaps or we're going to potentially find some through the research that's going to be done. So what I'm hearing is that you don't have an understanding whether there are gaps yet, so you would expect any gaps that would be found would be coming through the work the city's going to do?
I wouldn't say that I would identify gaps. I think there's work to build on. Like the city staff who have been doing work across community services, across the economic development teams and others. There was staff from across the whole corporation who were engaged in the work of the Task Force on Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion when that was going on. And there was a lot of things, you know, that were identified through that task force. Some have been actioned. I think some are still to come. All of those build towards better supporting the newcomers who are in this region. And so I think looking across service, across the whole corporation, there are opportunities for change that have been identified through the work of the task force, and to build on some of the work that staff are doing in terms of you know, there's changes to how infrastructure is being developed in the city. There's changes to the programming that has been offered through the community centers. And more of that will be very helpful, I think, for helping those who continue to come into the community to find their space here and really feel at home in the city of Kitchener.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come in today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, I would ask members of committee if you had questions before, if you could queue back in. I do have the list before me, so I'll make sure it's in the correct order. So again, this is questions of staff, and first up is Councillor Singh.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, this is a great step forward. This is exactly what I think this council and this initial direction to staff to explore options of how do we integrate and welcome new residents to our community. It gives us, I think, a go-forward map. And again, it amplifies the growing diversity of our community, which is enriching us. And, you know, at the same time, it showcases where we need to do more to ensure that all the new members to our community feel integrated and welcomed. So the question, apart from really specifying on newcomers, which is a more of an immigrant perspective lens of new residents that are, you know, new Canadians coming into Canada, what focal point do we have of just specifying a broader reach of newcomers to our community? And those newcomers could be that, you know, residents that just don't see the GTA as a viable fit for their growing families, and Kitchener is something that they're attracted towards. So, and they're not as well aware of the various services and, or, you know, how our community functions, the different neighbor associations that exist across our neighborhoods. How would this strategy integrate them as well?
Mr. May?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an issue that we discussed early on as a staff. I'll just bring back council to a really important point, is that at this point, 30% of our population was born outside of Canada. That's a huge percentage of our population. And so just focusing in on newcomers' needs as it pertains to new Canadians is a significant body of work. And so we believe if we don't focus on that particular group of individuals, we won't be as successful. Having said that, we do think that some of the recommendations that would come out of this strategy would be applicable for the types of newcomers that the Councillor Singh is discussing.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this work isn't necessary. What I wanted to know was, is this strategy all-encompassing of that also? Or perhaps it needs to be more focused on this, while perhaps providing support to additional strategies on the newcomers that, you know, maybe adds a support or additional leveraged assistance because the work is already done as part of the strategy. That's what I was trying to get at. How much of this can we, speaking of leveraging, build upon our multicultural festival? This is an event that we do already. That's something that's representative of celebrating the diversity of our community. How much can we do this work where we can continually seek more feedback from those, you know, the festival participants, and at the same time, the information that we have, that we've collected, can be disseminated through those festivals as well.
Go ahead.
So through the chair,
We have been already speaking with staff across the organization who, about attending the Multicultural Festival, similar to what we did back when the task force was up and running. We had a table there so that we could, raise awareness and help people understand what was happening. So we've looked at having something that would be in collaboration with other staff, because there's a bunch of different things going on. The official plan and customer service has been involved as well. And so we're definitely going to be leveraging, and that's the kind of engagement that we're planning on doing a lot of as part of this strategy, is to go to where newcomers are, as opposed to asking them to come to us. So that's the whole strategy with the engagement, is to meet people where they are, try to attend things where, where cultural organizations or other groups are going to be attending, so that we can do the engagement with them that way. So yeah, absolutely, we're going to be.
Okay. Good, thank you. I'll have comments later, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Next is Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Davy, and thank you for this report. I've had residents ask me about when we were going to get started on this strategy that are really, really interested in it. So it's wonderful to see. I loved your comment that you just made about meeting people where they're at. So I'm assuming then as well that we are going to do lots of work in our community centers when we have programming and things going on. Maybe you can comment on that, please.
Yeah. Yes, we are working very closely with community center supervisors, the manager of community centers. We've had a conversation, I have had a conversation with Angie, who led the engagement for the City of Kitchener strategy, and they're all very on board with supporting to use the community center pipeline to connect with community members, newcomers, and the wider community too.
Yeah, that's great, because that truly is an opportunity to meet people where they're at. I'm also going to ask you the same question as I asked Tara, and that is about how are we going to engage youth in this strategy, and do we have supports to help set them up for success, as I really do feel that many of them are supporting their families and in various ways to set them up for success.
It is a good question, and it's something that Ola and I have also been collaborating with staff within community services on, which is why it's so important that this project lives in community services, in terms of the kinds of supports that we get from staff, in terms of being able to leverage the resources that we already have in terms of youth. So Mr. Hildebrandt's team and the entire team that does programming for the community centers, we've already been working closely with them in terms of opportunities for engaging with youth, particularly with newcomer youth. And so we are, I would say we're very well connected within community services in order to make sure that we're reaching the populations that we need to.
Yeah, that's really great, because I think sometimes there's so many youth that are at our community centers, that are there playing basketball, et cetera, because it is the place for them to gather, and a way of really kind of keying in on them now, I think, is going to be really important. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for this report. My first question has to do with neighborhood associations. So I was the president of a neighborhood association some years ago, and one of the biggest challenges was in getting, people from the diverse backgrounds to join in and be part of the work that we were doing. And I would say as a president, I failed, right? Because I didn't have those tools, and I didn't know how to do the work. So I'm just wondering if this is part of the scope of the work that you're proposing here, that, how do neighborhood associations, and not everyone has a community center, right? So many will work, out of their homes, and how, is that part of the scope of what's being proposed here?
Mr. May?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are not specifically targeting new supports for neighborhood associations. We want to make sure that what we build is based on what we've heard from New Canadians. I do believe that one of the things will come up is the need to provide more and easier to access information about city services and other community organizations to new Canadians. And so I think through that, neighborhood associations may be captured, but it's not a specific issue that we will be addressing.
I guess my point is, like, how do we give the supports to the neighborhood associations themselves to know how to do that outreach, right? So I think it would be very helpful if that could be looked at. My second point, and this may sound like a weird, it's an observation, okay? So on page 5, you talk about the SDGs, and in particular, SDG number 3, healthy lives and promote well-being. Well, I went through the targets and indicators of SDG number 3, and I don't really understand how any of them apply to what we're doing here. So there are things like global maternal mortality ratios, preventable deaths of newborns and children under 5, end the epidemics of AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, etc. Reduce it by 1/3 premature mortality of non-communicable diseases. So I'm not, maybe you can tell me which of these targets and indicators we're actually referring to in this work.
The Chair, thank you. That's a great observation that we also had when we were working on this. But I did attend a webinar on SDGs, and it was mentioned that while we have to pay attention to the indicators, they are not exhaustive. So if we're doing work that we believe aligns with well-being and good health, it's okay to label it as that. And so that's why we believe that this does align with well-being. One of the focus areas is cultural inclusion, and then the third one is active community participation. The first one is economic prosperity. All of these things align with well-being because research has shown that when people struggle economically, it does affect their mental health. And so we believe there's a strong enough connection there to well-being, enough to have it as a link to the SDG 3. But that's an excellent observation. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I don't doubt that what's being proposed improves wellness, right? It's just, when you start drawing on, documents like the SDGs, it just seemed that things didn't necessarily interconnect. So that's just an observation. Thank you.
Ellen, do you want to add?
Yeah, so through the chair, I just wanted to add that, the purpose of identifying the existing frameworks is really just for that reason, so that we can look at, okay, here's what's already been created, where do we fit in, and so that we're not, because, as what Ms. Bedard had spoken about earlier, is that we want to draw on what's already been done. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. This is about looking at existing frameworks and seeing where it fits and where it doesn't. So yeah, so I think that it's just important to look at where we might fit and where where ours kind of fits in with the SDGs and other frameworks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor O'Dooney.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, staff, for this great work. I'm really excited about the work that you're putting in and the results that will come out of it. In fact, Barry was tapping me and reminded me that I fall within that 10-year category. So I guess I'm a newcomer, which is quite interesting. And this matters to me a whole lot as well. So I just had a few questions. The first was, I like the way the categories of immigrants was categorized. Can you just give a quick highlight? And the reason why I think this is important is usually when people speak about immigrants tend not to have an idea of, the different categories. Now, it doesn't have to be exhaustive, but which ones are you focusing on for the scope of this project?
Through the chair, thank you for that question. Regarding economic immigrant, we're focusing on all, actually. We will do our best to engage newcomers across all of those categories. For economic immigrants, these are people who are expected to arrive with resources. They usually go through a process where they are confirmed to have good English skills, financial resources, work experience, and education. That's the category that I do fall under. That's how I came to Canada. For refugees, we are finding that the only thing, it's a very wide group, and the only thing they all have in common is that these are people who have been forced to leave their home country and to come to Canada. But it's a very complex group. There are people who have excellent English skills. Some people don't. Some people are very well financially resourced. Some are not. Some people have excellent work experience. Some don't. So it's a very wide group, and we're kind of prioritizing learning more about that group, understanding that group, so that we can be flexible enough in the development of the strategy. The third category is the family sponsorships. I like to call them the people who are expected to arrive to resources, because for someone to be able to sponsor their family members, they're expected to have achieved a good level of stability in Canada to be able to, not necessarily family members, family, to sponsor them, to be able to sponsor their family. So that's the third category. For the fourth category, which would be other immigrants, there's not a lot of information, but what we know about that group is that some of the people who come in under humanitarian grounds fall in that category, but it's a very small percentage. It's just 1%. So we're not paying a lot of attention to that particular category, if that helps.
Thank you. That definitely helps a whole lot. You also mentioned 1 in 4. I did not know this. This is great. 1 in 4 newcomers end up venturing into entrepreneurial. I don't remember the word in a phrase, and I know through conversations that I've had, I've heard the word or phrasing around our goal is to ultimately empower people as well. Would love if you can speak to that in terms of empowering to be more entrepreneurial and empowering to, would like to just get a better understanding of the direction you're looking to go with the project.
The chair, so we are, as part of the work we're going to do, we're engaging very widely. We're leveraging the work being done at Immigration Partnerships to convene different organizations like the KW Chamber of Commerce. We've had conversations with the Workforce Planning Board of Waterloo, Wellington, and Dufferin. So these are things that we're factoring in. One of the 3 focus areas also is economic prosperity. So that encompasses entrepreneurship and employment. So we're trying to learn from the community to develop the recommendations that will come out of this strategy. So we don't want to preempt the community, but we're trying to widen our engagements as much as possible to cover areas like economic prosperity, cultural inclusion, and active community participation, if that answers your question.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Davey, and thank you for the comments about language, because I think really that's a pretty big barrier. My wife owns a business, and she's hired a refugee from Ukraine, and they've gotten around the language barrier by using Google Translate on their phone, and it's been really helpful to her to learn the ways, and she really wants to know some of the Canadian ways and the way things happen in Kitchener here. And, I know and I think it's great that as people come from other countries, they have their own community. There's Nigerian community who meet and gather together. I wonder if there's a way in this that, we could speak with them and those that do need the help with the language to really let them know that we want them to be part of what we do here, and if language is an issue, guiding them, helping to learn English, I think, so they can fully participate. Is this part of the program?
Through the chair, thank you for that question, we are engaging widely with newcomer serving organizations, and these are some of the organizations that provide language support to newcomers, right? So, and we're also engaging, we want to engage with ethnocultural groups. So I imagine that's that's what you were talking about. So I believe in the process of having all of these conversations, these things would come up, and just like we've discussed, some things are low-hanging fruits. As people are saying that they're experiencing some challenges, we're able to say, oh, that newcomer serving organization already provides that support, right? So I know that that's something that's going to be part of the work that we're doing in terms of letting people know about the resources that are available within the community. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think just knowing that they're very welcome and we want them to be part of who we are is really important.
Thank you. Councillor Anetis?
Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Great presentation and some really important work here. I just want to know how this all ties into the greater community and how we can, to the greater community, how we can integrate this so that everyone knows our strategy, and whether, a regular citizen that's been here for a long time that can help assist with newcomers.
So through the chair, in terms of the strategy, so, one of the biggest components of the engagement process will be to try to bring the community along. Is that what you mean, like the larger community? Because that is really important part of this work. And I think it's come up a little bit in terms of some of the questions that have already been asked. And, it's about increasing the awareness and education around the newcomer strategy itself for newcomers, but also increasing that awareness with the larger population so that they better understand, even better understanding the statistics, the percentage of our population that is made up of newcomers, the absolutely essential assets that newcomers are to our community and as well as our economy. Like, these are all really important components that we will be including in the engagement process.
Okay, yeah. I think it's important that, that we educate even the greater population. Like a quarter of newcomers have really good paying jobs and all that stuff. So it's really good to know that, so that everyone understands that it's makes up a lot of components with this strategy. So I think it's very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also just to add, the collaboration piece with newcomer serving organizations is essential as well in terms of, that we're reaching as widely as possible throughout the community.
Okay, great. Okay, Mr. Chair, I don't think anyone's moved the item. I'm prepared to move it.
No one has. Thank you. Mayor Benefic has questions. He's not here, so I'll go ahead and ask mine. I did preface when I asked Ms. Bedard, one of my concerns was there are so many different levels of government and groups that are involved in this sort of work was the redundancy, potential redundancy, and making sure that we're doing work where there is gaps. And I realized that was covered in the report. I was happy to see that. But I guess my question, which I'm a little unclear, and again, I'm to be frank, I'm a white guy that was born in Canada. I can't imagine some of the barriers and gaps that will come around. But do we know yet that there will be significant gaps, or is it possible that the work will come back and say that there actually it is well covered off, which would be a good news story, frankly, if it was well covered off. I just want to make sure that we have that open mindset when it comes back to council.
So through you, I guess, I don't know what we say in this case. The strategy, first and foremost, the strategy will be developed out of the engagement that we do with the community and with newcomers in particular. So we don't know what the strategy is going to look like and include, but what we do know is that we are not interested in duplicating or duplicating services or reinventing the wheel, which is why we are working so closely with immigrant-serving organizations on potential areas of collaboration and support as part of the strategy development. So I wouldn't say that we are, whether we're going to find gaps or not find gaps. Just to reiterate Ms. Bedard's point from earlier is that we know change is needed. We know change is needed. It's not necessarily about gaps. It's about changing with the population shifts that we're seeing and what those changes mean. And in particular, working within our own jurisdiction as the City of Kitchener, what can we do to support the changes that, the Immigration Partnership has already identified or other organizations have already identified, whether it's partnering with them, supporting their services, or offering new programs within our community centers to support the needs of newcomers. And so so in terms of just bringing back to this point, which is we will find out from the community what their needs are, because that is the entire approach that we're taking.
That's excellent, thank you. So Mayor Benevik had questions, but he did have to take, I'm assuming, an important phone call just now. So what I'll do is I'll go into comments, and if you return some time for questions, and I'll let him go. So if you had comment, please ring in. Councillor Stretch.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make a comment around the volatile political environment that we're seeing right now. And I just think now more than ever is a time for us to invest in support in people who are Canadians or who are about to become Canadians. So I'm really happy to see this work happening, especially at this time. So thank you for the good work.
Very good. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Davey. Yeah, thank you so much for this work. One of my favorite days of the year is our multicultural festival. And I really think that if our new residents could attend that, it would really show them how much we value, how much we appreciate, how much we love all the diverse cultures that make us so much stronger and so much more interesting and the music, the food, the dance. Every culture shares it. Every other culture loves it. It's. I think if they could get that sense of you really are welcome here. We want you to participate. We want you to share your culture and all your strengths. It would be fabulous. And I think Councillor Ayduni was touching on too for business. We do have the Small Business Community Network who will go out of their way to help business and get them connected. So great work. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no one else in the queue, and I would echo the comments of my colleagues here. Just by way of feedback as well, I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record with the artificial intelligence and technology aspect of it, but I do think a lot of this, a lot of the barriers that people will face when you're looking at it is due to things like Councillor Schneider mentioned, translation and those sorts of services as well. So I'm hoping that we make sure that we explore the technological landscape in terms of finding some solutions as well. So I'm very happy to support this. I see that Councillor Singh is clicked in as well. Councillor Singh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that, Mr. Chair. I had said that I was wanting to make some comments. I just wasn't paying attention when you asked, so my apologies, forgot to press the button. So if you would allow, just again, want to thank staff on, I guess, the progressive work that they've put into this. I've had lengthy conversations with staff as to how we can broaden this strategy, and if this is mechanism that we can do that through other avenues as well, which is great. Again, what I see this is it's an all-encompassing effort to make people feel welcome. Allow people to feel respected in our community and allow them to feel as they are an integral part of Kitchener, what it means to be a Kitchenerite. And as you have said, Chair Davey, some of this work can be done through advent of progression of technology, through AI, through translation, but I think it's important for us to recognize and take some, acknowledgement that this council has been leading edge with our universal language efforts that we've already integrated within our service delivery, and this will just continue that work on forward. I think the last thing I really want to say is the greatest thing that we can do is allow people just to feel welcome. and allow them, create an effort for them to feel safe. And that takes a lot of work. It doesn't happen overnight, but I think that should be the undertone of the strategy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's no one else in the queue, so we'll take the vote as moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Those in favor? And Councillor Ioannidis? No, sorry, could you repeat? It sounded, sorry, please repeat.
In favor.
In favor, thank you. And that carries. Okay, and so we'll move on to the next item then. The next item is where are we here? The fireworks exemption for Tecumseh Park. And I believe Ms. McNeil will kick things off. Good afternoon. If you just click your, there we go. When you're ready.
Through you, Councillor Davey, the exemption that is before Council today for your consideration is a request for an exemption from 3 bylaws, so the Parks bylaw, the Noise bylaw, and the Fireworks bylaw, to allow for a fireworks display to be set off in Tecumseh Park by a qualified pyrotechnic company. That is being requested by the Emmericks, who are hosting a backyard wedding for their daughter on August 23rd, 2025. They're hoping that if approved, they would hire the pyrotechnic company who would have a finale, so to speak, at the end of the reception, which would be held between 9:30 and 10 p.m. once it becomes dark, and would last between 5 to 7 minutes. So Mr. Chris Emmerich is here today to answer any questions that council may have in regards to the specific request that's being asked.
Thank you. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. I just have one question to start. Has a request like this been asked before, or is this a first?
Chair to council, very rare. So we found 2 instances where permits were issued for fireworks to be let off on our property. And that's dating back to about a dozen years. So very rare.
Okay. For now, that's all I have.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you for the question. So it's not something that we do ongoing, but again, we just talked about how we're a changing community, and our culture practices sometimes can be a little bit different as well. So understanding what the ask is coming from. Have the area residents, the report emphasized the effort that will be made to make them aware. That will be sent by the applicant, or notifying their neighbors that something like this will happen.
Ms. McNeil.
Through the chair, that is one of the requirements that we have put into the report. So, and we typically do that with any sort of noise exemption. So yeah, we have built that in, and we have had multiple conversations with the Emmerich family around just safety concerns and getting the messaging out to the residents so that they're aware and can choose to make other arrangements if they prefer.
Okay, that's good. It shows that they're going to make effort to make it a collaborative consideration for their neighbors. The duration, it's quite small, right, for the actual fireworks?
Through the chair, yes. So through my conversations with the family, it appears that it'll be between 5 to 7 minutes. So it is a fairly short duration of time.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. I would just have some comments afterwards.
Certainly. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Davey.
Ms. McNeil, when does the firework bylaw information come back that staff have been working on? Maybe staff can answer that question.
Through Councillor Davey, so staff are planning on bringing that back, I believe, April 14th for consideration.
And this is after that date, right?
Yes, so this would be August 23rd.
Okay, and I believe I read in the report that if council has a direction of banning fireworks, that would also apply to this as well?
Through the chair, so I will just clarify, anything that is brought back for consideration of council will still allow a permit process application. So that's not something we're looking at removing even through this review. We would still encourage people who want to have large fireworks displays to go through that permit process, which we've always allowed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Davey. Is there any concern, currently we allow fireworks on 3 days of the year. Is there any concern that permitting this will open the door for, more permits like this?
I'll comment, and then Mr. Heikert can add if he chooses. Through the chair, so again, this is a permit process that has always been permitted, and we are looking at continuing to allow to happen. So I don't see this being a request that is asked for very often. This is not a consumer fireworks where somebody would be setting them off themselves. This is actually hiring a pyrotechnic company with a license who's got expertise in this field, which is very different than just, somebody having a backyard firework display.
Okay. I don't know, Councilor Michaud, you brought this up too about the volume of the fireworks. So this being a professional, would this be, I don't even know if there's differing volumes that you can, have with fireworks, but.
Yeah, through the chair, I'm not aware whether or not these would be any louder than a normal fireworks display. I can only suggest that given that this is their business, that I would think that it would be done in a very safe manner.
Yeah, I'm sure it would be safe if it's professional. I think I'll let Councilor Michaud ask her questions. So I think probably we have similar questions. So.
Thank you, Councillor Stretch.
Yes, is there a cost associated with obtaining the permit?
Oh, pardon me, could you just click your, oh, you're already in. Sorry, go ahead.
Apologies. Through the chair to council, there is a fee associated with the permit application. I believe it's around $100.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Who hasn't asked questions yet? Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Davey. And Councillor Schneider asked the question that I wanted to in terms of being concerned about whether or not this would kind of be precedent setting. So I'm going to take it a little step further and say, do you have any concerns about this causing confusion? I can already see the Reddit posts that will say, oh, I didn't think we were allowed to do this, and now people are doing it in a park. So is there concern on staff's part about confusing messages to the public from allowing this to happen?
Mr. May?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's a fair point. I think we can anticipate social media posts asking why are fireworks going off. I think we can anticipate calls into our corporate contact center, so we'll have to have them prepared to respond. There is a circulation area where homeowners will be told, but beyond that, I have no doubt that there will be some questions.
So sorry, I didn't quite catch whether you said you think that you couldn't anticipate whether there would be social media posts or whether there would not be.
I do believe there is a good likelihood we will see social media posts and receive calls into the corporate contact center asking, why are fireworks going off? It's not one of the approved weekends.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Dooney.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to quickly finish the Made in Canada Kit Kat. I'm just kidding. In terms of circulation area, when we circulate letters to surrounding neighborhood, how far are we going? Do we have an idea of what that would look like?
Through the chair, we typically request that any event holder do so within the immediate neighborhood that is typically most affected. I think, however, as Mr. May had said, we anticipate that we may have, like, given the size of them, that that area may stretch out. So I think we'll be prepared to work with communications and some others just to make sure we're getting the message out.
Okay. What happens if, and I don't know if this question was asked earlier on, letters are circulated, but neighbors do not want this, or how do we handle something like that? Do they reach out to bylaw? Do they send a message to their counselor? Is there a process for that, or is it just a mere information, hey, this is happening, and that's it?
Through the chair, typically what we do with an exemption process is that if we received complaints the night of, we will still respond and take the information and use that to help us make judgment calls in the future for future requests for exemptions. However, for that night in particular, once council provides an exemption, then they would be exempt for that event.
Well, what I mean is if the letter goes out, I'm assuming the letter will probably go 5 days, 6 days before the actual event. People receiving the letters and start reaching out saying they do not want this in their neighborhood. That was what I meant.
Okay, my apologies. Through the chair, yes. So at that point, if council's already granted the exemption, then we would just take their concerns and try to work with the family to mitigate them if we can. But if we can't, if it's simply they don't want fireworks and council's already provided the exemption, then we wouldn't be able to retract that.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Michaud, are you questions or comment? Question? Go ahead.
Thank you. The one piece I'm kind of struggling with here, it's in a public park. And this is a wedding, and they're hiring pyrotechnical specialists. And so they have the dollars to do this. Is there not a concern about some equity a piece here? People who maybe can't afford a pyrotechnic place but want to have fireworks in a park, and they can't do it because they can't afford it. So, and because it's a public park, that's why I think that underscores the concern here.
Through Councillor Davey, so I think my response to that is simply that anybody that would bring forward this sort of a request, we would consider it. So, I appreciate your comment, but I think we would just have to consider, like, the information was brought forward. We were asked to bring this forward as a request, so we've done that and provided all of the information that we can that's associated with it.
Okay, and I have one more question. So with regards to fire safety, does fire see any concerns with something like this under this kind of model? And would you see a concern if someone else wanted to do the same thing but not have the specialist just be able to do the same thing that we're asking people not to do now? If that makes sense. Sorry, it's a whole lot of stuff there.
Through the chair to council. If someone else wanted to do this in the future, another group, they would fill out the application form, very much like this group will have to do. So this party has yet to submit their application. Once that's done, it will be cross-referenced to the bylaw, so setbacks will be checked, insurance. We need to be named as a party on their insurance for $5 million. So safety checks will be done in regards to reviewing their application, reviewing their site plan, and then in the future, any other applications would be reviewed the same way.
Okay, so just circling back to my initial question to you, you haven't seen this in years, like no one that you can recall has done something like this in a public park?
Through the chair to council, it's been quite a while.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Janot, question or comment?
Question.
Question, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question for Ms. McNeil. Are the bylaws that we have, are
all of them available for exemptions, like people to apply for exemptions for them? Or is there only a certain few that can be applied as an exemption or apply for an exemption?
Through the chair, I believe that all of the bylaws would be open to an exemption from council. I think the way most of them are written is that council does have the ability to provide an exemption.
Okay, so this would be a one-time exemption. For example, if somebody, as we've seen in the past, doesn't have the two same layers of foundation for their tractor and their truck, can they apply for an exemption for that particular reason and have it, continuous?
Sorry, can you give me that example again?
Yeah, so if you remember correctly, earlier this year, we met with a resident in my ward, and there had been numerous complaints that his tractor trailer was parked on basically stone dust, not asphalt, but his truck is on asphalt, and it's not one continuous surface. And so would he be able to apply for an exemption for that for a continuous period of time? Or is that something council could look at amending?
Through the chair, thank you for clarifying. So no, that would be under the zoning bylaw. So there's different processes depending on where the authority comes to write the bylaw. So these are municipal act bylaws that provide for council to provide an exemption, something under the zoning bylaw. There's committee of adjustment that people can apply for variances, so there would be a different process for that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Verbenovich?
Thanks a lot, and I apologize. I had to step out to take a call, so this may have been asked, and I heard it referenced. But I seem to recall past examples where there were things that happened in parks, and probably the one that comes most to mind for me was Meadow Lane Park, where there was a annual, it wasn't specific to a wedding and so on, but there was an annual community thing that happened, and fireworks went there. I mean, beyond Meadow Lane, there was obviously the big show at the Odd every year, years ago. But Meadow Lane's probably the one that comes closest to mind. Did we consider that at all
Mr. May?
in this mix?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think those are very different events. And to give you some sense of the timing, as a young child, I attended those events at Meadow Lane. So those were run by service clubs who had robust security and cleaning plans. I think that's a very different request than council has in front of you today. I mean, I think that attracted hundreds of people. It was a well-known event. The community attended. It wouldn't have surprised anybody. So I think they are very different events.
But, okay, and, fair enough. But, I mean, presumably this is something that, it's going to be in the sky, so, and shared with surrounding neighbors, so it'll be there for the community to enjoy, correct? I don't know if Councillor Davey knows.
Mr. May, and I'll speak to it after, but Mr. May, do you want to?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, I think what might be helpful is for staff to repeat how often we are aware that this has happened in the past. Mr. Mayor, I think you were out at the time, and I think that would be helpful information to answer your question.
Through the chair to council, so 2 permits that we could find, Mr. Mayor, that have been issued in the last 12 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, no more questions, so comments, Councillor Singh?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a unique application. Obviously, we haven't had many in the past, so this is out of the ordinary. I understand from the Horseshoe, the colleagues that have raised concerns over the issues that could arise. But what gives me some comfort is the fact that the area residents are being informed. They are being circulated with information on what's going to happen. This will be an opportunity for us to receive that feedback before and after the event. So it will allow us to produce maybe, improvement of the method that we currently do it, or even do we allow it continuing forward? The other part is the fact that it is a pyrotechnic firm that's doing it, so it's going to be done safely because it's being done on public land, on city-owned land. So we absolutely need it to be done through a professional. Another aspect is the fact that duration is set in time, that it will be only 5 to 7 minutes. I would prefer 5, but again, 7 minutes still is a short period of time that it won't, provide a continuous disruption to the neighborhood. And of course, the insurance that's required. Again, these are onerous steps. I think these are necessary steps. So because the lengthy process that someone has to go through to making a request like this and the costs associated, hiring a company, taking the necessary insurance, I don't think it's the ability by many. But again, it does allow someone that does want to celebrate an event in a particular way that we give that leeway. But again, I think it would be helpful to look at it as almost as a test case to see how effectively we manage it before and after, and what the concerns that arise, if any. But otherwise, I'd be supportive in giving the exemption.
Yeah, thank you. I think actually I'm going to jump in now with my comments before going to the final two. So a couple things, just in the interest of full disclosure, the applicant is a neighbor and the park is actually very close to where I live. So much so that I did seek approval from the Integrity Commissioner to participate, who did actually reply, kind of to my surprise actually, and said that he did not see it as a pecuniary interest, which is why I'm still here. Just a couple things if I could help clarify too, that I just want to be clear on the bylaw. The way the bylaw is written now, it's not like the applicant is going against the bylaw. It very clearly says that someone may actually apply to do this. So it is a permitted process as of this point. That may change in the future with respect to the wider firework bylaw that we put in the future, but as of right now, this is totally something they can apply for. As the ward councillor, the other reason that I don't really see much issue with this is, in my experience in the past with the concerns with fireworks, it has largely been fireworks that are going off at 1 o'clock in the morning on a weeknight, waking everyone up, being otherwise disruptive. As you may have heard earlier, the fireworks here are planned to be between 9:30 and 10 o'clock at night. So they're doing it really as early as they possibly can. So I don't really have any issue with this. And if anything, I kind of see it as an interesting pilot that we can look for best practices afterwards, because it hasn't been for so long, for other potential events. And if it works well, great. If not, if it doesn't work well, then we can make some adjustments in the future. So I will continue on the list for comments. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. I don't think this will come as a surprise that I'm really struggling with this. I think we haven't even gotten to the point where we have a new bylaw established, or a direction where we're going with the report that is going to come after we decide on whether or not to approve this event. And I think there's just so many, so much up in the air with regards to fireworks. We haven't nailed anything really down on what we should be doing here. And I think that this is just setting another precedent that we're going to have to struggle with, add it to the list of things that we have to struggle with on special occasions. So I don't think I can support this today. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Davey. And I share some of the similar concerns that Councillor Michaud does. And I'm not, if it was Councillor Michaud or Johnston, bringing up the equity lens. Not every person, thank you, it was you. Not everybody in the community can afford such an event. But we are proactively telling them that we're looking to cramp down on fireworks because, they're not necessarily being used in the safest manner, and this is completely different than that. But we hear quite often, people who are working shifts, animals are stressed out during these kinds of events, and even if it's for 5 or 7 minutes. These are the concerns that we've heard over the last couple of years, and so I'm really not trying to be like a Debbie Downer, but I just, if we bring back a firework policy in April, and we restrict or we say no fireworks, well, 3 months down the road, we're going to be allowing because somebody applied for an exemption. I think that, that's trying to talk out of both sides of our mouth, and so I can't support it. I do appreciate the fact that, it is a special time for this couple. I get it, but I think it does set a bad precedent, and I can't support it.
Thank you. Councillor Stretch?
Yeah, I'm happy to support this request, and I just wanted to take time to say thanks for following all the avenues and applying for the permits, and not going ahead and doing it anyways, and then facing the consequences after. So thank you, and happy to support it.
Thank you. And Councillor Ioannidis?
Thank you, Chair Davey. I do struggle with this one a little bit, but I guess what makes me feel a little more comfortable with it is, as outlined by Councillor Singh, the many positives that it's looked after by a professional company, et cetera, and the time limits. And I truly believe when we do see the full report, to make the full wholesome opinion on what we'll do with fireworks, I'm more than happy to see the community apply and just sort of like this, apply for such and such events, and that they're more sanctioned events. And I think if we go this route, I think we're gonna at least be able to have individuals that will be able to enjoy fireworks, and then those that aren't be able to enjoy fireworks will also be happy. So
Thank you. And finally, Mayor Verbenovich.
Thanks very much, and thanks to staff for the work that they did on this, and Councillor Davey for bringing this forward. And I too want to thank the applicant for actually coming in and applying, because the reality is the vast majority of people wouldn't go that route and would simply do it. And chances are, in most instances, probably nothing would come of it. And here someone, has a special day in their life. They have endeavored to do the right thing. It seems reasonable. The ward councillor is supportive of it. And so, when I factor all those things in it, I will be supporting this. Council won't be surprised to hear, because you've heard it from me before. I mean, I am concerned that because of the actions of a few, in the long run, we don't start making decisions that will negatively impact many in the community. And while I realize that there are differing views on fireworks from amongst the community and from people, and I've heard from people on both sides of the issue, the majority of the problem is that at least I hear is not from people who are outright opposed to them, but are opposed to them at midnight or 1 a.m. in the morning. And I get that. And so, this seems like a very reasonable, structured, and safe approach in terms of how to handle it. And so I will be supporting it, and I hope we can see our way to doing that as well. And quite frankly, consider similar kinds of requests if they come forward in the future.
Okay. Thank you. I just realized I don't have a mover for it. Moved by Councillor Stretch. Okay, there's no one else in the queue. 1 second here. Okay, those in favor? And opposed? And Councillor Ioannidis.
in favor.
In favor. The motion carries. Thank you, everyone. We're now going to move on to the next item, which is the municipal and school board election alternative voting methods.
Lifetime appointments.
And Ms. Fusco will give us a 5-minute presentation.
Good afternoon. I'm here today to discuss voting methods in preparation for the 2026 municipal election. The Municipal Elections Act requires that the clerk have responsibility to conduct an election with regards to voters and candidates that may have disabilities. There are also principles in the Act that form a basis for every decision that must be made when administering the election. The accessible enhancements that were undertaken in the 2022 election and are expected to continue were noted in the report. Section 42 of the Act requires that Council may pass bylaws authorizing the use of alternative voting systems, and the purpose of the report before you today is to seek Council direction on those methods. As a part of the investigation, City staff has engaged with the electorate, our Accessibility Advisory Committee, municipal comparators, and the school boards to determine any discussions or preferences on voting methods. To inform the analysis, staff considered post-election surveys, feedback from the committee, municipal best practices, and previous council discussions and decisions. Ensuring reliability, dependability, and verifiability while addressing resources and principles in the Act is difficult to balance. Staff applied the alternative voting methods against the city's corporate risk framework as it related to security and reliability, budget, and resources to implement each method. The results of the risk assessment were included in Appendix A and will be highlighted in more detail on the next few slides. The use of vote counting equipment over the past 5 elections, tabulators, upholds all the principles of the Act. And from the post-election survey, we know that 90% of respondents were satisfied with the voting opportunities that were provided. Tabulators do help in a number of ways. To enhance accessibility, staff also investigated other programs that leveraged paper ballots and tabulators. We've heard that electors are interested and want to use online or internet voting. We're not disputing that it remains an accessible method that allows independent voting for individuals with disabilities, but also convenience for travelers and post-secondary students. It's also used by a number of municipalities, however, not the province's largest ones. As I mentioned previously, dependability and verifiability means trust in the electoral process, and the voting method should be fair and accessible. The report addresses in detail risks associated with third-party vendor reliance, rising municipal cyber attacks, foreign interference in online voting systems, a lack of standards, and a reduced number of trusted online voting vendors. As the largest online voting vendor, Dominion Voting Systems, has ceased to offer this remote method, citing paper ballots as a gold standard. For these reasons, staff is not recommending online or internet voting. Vote by mail, according to the voting method survey, was preferred third after online voting and the use of tabulators. While there are accessibility benefits, risks associated with this method are similar to online voting, the third-party dependency on Canada Post. The high budget for this method and the timely return of ballots cannot be guaranteed, as deadlines and delays affect the certainty that the results reflect the votes cast. As evident by the strike in the fall of last year, impacts to the Postal Service would have a significant impact on the results of the votes cast. For these reasons, staff is not recommending remote access vote by mail. Tabulators remain a consistent foundational technology. They are reliable, support accessibility and barrier reduction, and support the reporting of unofficial results on election night. They are rigorously tested and configured through logic and accuracy testing, and the city makes those procedures publicly available on the municipal website. Additionally, backup devices are configured, ensuring limited downtime processing ballots should a device fail. The city does not use internet transmission of results from the tabulators. They are not connected to the internet, and upon return to City Hall, the physical results tapes are verified against the data on the memory cards and the results reporting system, ensuring that transparent checks and balances are in place. To enhance the use of paper ballots and tabulators, staff considered 2 new programs that would meet voters where they are and offer a private, confidential, and independent way for voters to cast a ballot. Electors could request, due to illness, injury, or disability, that election staff conduct a home vote. The components of the home vote program are detailed in the staff report, and the administration and implementation would be determined by the clerk. Though not the same as home voting, I'm usually not over time. Though not the same as home voting, in 2022, we did conduct 11 home visits to authorize a proxy voting form so that electors could attend in person, that could not attend in person, could appoint a proxy to vote on their behalf. This was very meaningful, and we did hear that many expressed gratitude for us to be able to attend so they could exercise their right. The pilot program would offer many benefits and lower risks and nominal costs. And lastly, in 2022, we heard that curbside voting was not well communicated and caused electors to wait in the parking lot until an appropriate break in time for the election official to attend their vehicle. To improve accessibility, electors could attend a drive-through voting opportunity in a vehicle, shared or mobility transit, or while walking. The components of the drive-through program are detailed in the staff report, and administration and implementation would be determined by the clerk. Like Home Vote, this pilot program would offer many benefits with low risk and nominal costs. Additionally, staff continue to investigate other accessibility measures, including masked and scent-free locations and a central hub for accessibility enhancements. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. There are a few people in the queue with questions. 4 now, beginning with Councillor O'Dooney.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this presentation. I really do appreciate it. It's great to see all the work that goes behind the scenes to keep democracy going. Just 2 questions. When you talked about the online voting, I'm just interested because I know some of the risks that are involved, but would love your thoughts around what standards could end up being created that could get it to a level of a safe space for us to explore. What needs to be in place to ensure something like that does happen?
So through the chair, thank you for the question. The Digital Governance Council has approved a set of standards, internet voting standards. They are at this point voluntary, and I know that in the marketplace we've had discussions around whether the vendors can actually meet the requirements in the standard. So I touched on dependability, verifiability, validity of the results. We are still determining whether or not any of the vendors can meet those requirements. They are private entities that often don't expose their infrastructure and interdependencies to their clients. So at this point, there's still a lot of unknowns around if those standards would meet the purpose of being able to verify and validate the voting process.
Okay. I believe there are a few cities from the report that are currently using the online voting process. Did we get to chat with them? Do we have any feedback from them in terms of what they're experiencing with that?
So through the chair, there are a number of municipalities that are using online voting. We have been in touch with our neighbors. City of Cambridge offered internet voting and has for several elections. They primarily use Dominion Voting Systems, who is no longer in the market. So there are a number of municipalities, larger municipalities, that would have used that vendor that are currently looking at other vendor opportunities. There are some smaller internet technology firms, but again, not a lot that have been tested in the Ontario market. So yes, we have connected with our colleagues. There are certain decision points that, again, are not reflected in the legislation. It is written as though the election is a hand count paper ballot. So decisions around authentication, 1-step versus 2-step, that are made by each municipality. So yes, we've been in touch with our colleagues to understand their methods and their rationale.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Davey. Apologize, my question doesn't concern alternative methods, but more advanced polling. In the provincial election, I heard a lot of positive comments by being able to vote at a grocery store. And people were like shopping, oh, I can vote. So I'm wondering if that's, if maybe we could get the results from the advanced polls from the provincial election that were held in busy places like a grocery store, and if we might be able to consider that for our next election.
So through the chair, to the question, we do look at the provincial voting locations that are used. We do our best to align the use of similar facilities just for familiarity purposes. We have had, as I understand, previous discussions with some large retailers about the ability to put a voting location, for example, at a retail facility to shop and vote if the public is already there. So those will be certainly things that we consider when we're establishing the 2026 election locations.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the report. Again, it's a refresher, in different methods that voting can take place, but, my concerns continue to be where, any option that could enable undue pressure towards someone who's choosing to participate in the democratic process, which is very different than a polling station, where there's a sense of safety and secrecy of the person's, without influence, a person's wish to vote in whichever they want. The comment regarding the drive-through voting, would it be like a single person driving? My concern tends to be the same about undue influence if they're driving with a spouse or another partner, and are they voting in the same open space together?
So through the chair, this is a new program that was just piloted in 2022, and so we are still learning from our colleagues. Thunder Bay, Cambridge, Oakville all held drive-through voting. As I understand it, when there is multiple components, multiple individuals in a vehicle, what we typically would do is administer an oath, much like we do if you want somebody to attend behind a voting screen with you. The electors understand the obligations of taking that oath in front of the election official, and so if that oath would be administered, then they would all be provided, again, no different, a paper ballot in a secrecy sleeve, and so, the election official is standing adjacent to the vehicle, so if there was dialogue, they would be able to hear that, and so again, have some conversations, much like we would correct in an actual voting location, that, the secrecy of the vote is important, but others have handled things that way.
Okay, all right, that would be my concern if we were to look at that, again, the windows down, with, the election official being able to overhear any conversations, and still perhaps, I guess, the sleeves or whatever, the voting mechanism to be provided in a way that they can still enable some sense of secrecy from their partner. But yeah, I mean, it was my question, but my comments remain the same, that I think the privacy and the person's ability not to be influenced by anyone else should be the most, primary concern for us through voting methods. And the other is to align as best possible to the provincial processes, as opposed to figuring out our own separate ways amongst the 404 municipalities across the province.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, just clarification. Did you say that you're still looking at other accessible methods?
So through the chair, yes, we're certainly looking for feedback, and we've approached our Accessibility Advisory Committee. They were the ones that suggested a mask and dissent-free location. That was not something that was offered in 2022, and so we are looking at other opportunities like that. We also were not able to use City Hall in 2022 due to the construction, so we are looking at potentially leveraging that with accessibility enhancements as well. So those are all using paper ballots and tabulators, so it's not deemed an alternative method. It would be an accessibility enhancement at the discretion of the clerk.
Okay, and that could still be implemented in the 2026 election. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Rabinovich?
Thanks, Chair Davey, and thanks, Ms. Fusco, for the report that's in front of us. It's always an important piece of work, and I think, we only need to look in some jurisdictions to come to appreciate how important democracy and local elections are, and quite frankly, how important elections are in terms of creating a healthy and prosperous future, and maybe one less so when we see some of the things happening in other places. Great report, and I'll be honest, I'm happy to see your recommendation around internet voting, because I continue to have some concerns around it. And to be clear, in the research that we've done in places that have gone that route, there really hasn't been an increase in turnout. It's only simply provided a different way of voting. Is that correct?
So through the chair, that's correct. The studies that have been conducted by Brock University have shown there may be a slight blip, a 1% to 2% increase, but that voting methods do not generally create a higher turnout. It is matters like races on the top of the ballot or controversial issues that may be experiencing within the community that tend to generate greater voter uptake.
Okay. And in terms of, the kinds of feedback I've heard has been around frequency of advanced balloting opportunities, as well as things like, you referenced potential shopping areas. I know the market has come up before. City Hall is an example. Places where, not unlike our engagement strategy, where we kind of go to where people are. We talked about that earlier today in terms of our newcomer strategy for engagement. The same, I think, can be said in terms of voting. So does this report give you enough latitude and, most importantly, enough budget in order to accommodate that and provide some enhancements in comparison to last time around?
So through the chair, apologies, the setting of advanced dates, times, and locations was a council requirement previously that has been removed from the Act. Certainly have to receive direction today in terms of other advance and voting opportunities to consider. So that those will certainly be taken into consideration. In terms of the budget, the report does touch on a potential increase to the election reserve. Should that be approved, that would provide us with the funding needed to support additional locations as it relates to City Hall or the market or other locations that maybe we haven't pursued previously.
Okay, and just on that fundraising piece, I guess, if there is an increase because we're well into the 4-year period, we would need a 1-year blip next year in terms of that amount in order so that you have the necessary resources in 2026, I guess it is. And then, I guess, bring it down and spread it out over 4 years after that? Is that what's needed?
So through the chair, the report just speaks about increasing the annual contribution. It doesn't address a gap in previous years, if I may refer to our Chief Financial Officer for that.
So through the chair, as the report indicates, we would look to use the tax stabilization reserve if needed to support the upcoming election. And then we would right-size the contributions through the budget process to make sure that on an ongoing basis that the election reserve reflects the amount that's needed to carry out the election every 4 years. So that's a process that's consistent with past practice, where if we don't have enough funding, we would look to the tax stabilization reserve to cover that.
Okay, so if we give some direction to today and subsequently at council, we would make that change for 2026 and going forward, and anything extra that's needed, you would just simply take from the tax stabilization reserve, correct?
So through the chair, that's correct. For the upcoming election, that would be the strategy, and then we would right-size the contribution on a go-forward basis.
For the next 4 years. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Johnston?
Thank you, Chair Davey. And I wanted to start by thanking our clerks for a really great report. I know how hard you work in elections to try and ensure that everybody can vote. I also want to say that I was able to connect residents with you in the last election who'd reached out to me on election day and who needed help having somebody help them vote in the parking lot. So thank you for that. Just taking that a step further, though, is there a way of connecting with, say, KW Accessibility or something, and maybe is there like a central location that maybe we can look at having a polling station for people that might need those accessible votes? So that would be part one, and I guess just that ability to reach out to those groups who probably best know about what's needed here.
So through the chair, we have been in touch with KW Accessibility. They're actually interested in doing some lunch and learns to talk a little bit about voting methods as it relates to accessibility needs. So that's certainly direction that we can take to engage with them about voting location preferences. We do have the assistive ballot marking devices at each location, within one in each ward. So again, that could be part of the centralized enhancements of accessibility services. And similarly, we've been in touch with our Equity and Anti-Racism Committee about the potential to work with the Indigenous community to similarly have a location where it provides easy access to that voting process.
That's wonderful.
Does the region or the school boards contribute to the costs of the election?
So through the chair, they do not. So the local municipality is responsible for funding the cost of the general election, which does include the regional council, regional chair, and school board trustees. The region of Waterloo does in kind provide assistance with communication supports. So we do have branding related to WR Votes. There was a website that was created with election information for the regional chair and regional councillors. So they do provide assistance, and they do form part of our election planning team, but they do not provide financial compensation.
So, okay, so, and then that even includes if we were to, and again, I'm not supportive of internet voting, but supposing we wanted to increase the voting to the reach, that falls entirely in the lower tier municipality, and the upper tier and the school boards get the benefit.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Oh, okay. Councillor Chapman, question or comment?
Move it when appropriate, and I have a comment.
Certainly. Actually, I could just get you to queue back in for the comment, if you don't mind. Councillor Deneau is ahead with comment. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for this detailed work. I can tell you, I think the city and the province and the federal government do have a great ability to engage with all residents. You know, working in long-term care, you know, every voting day we have a polling station. I'm not so sure other jurisdictions around the world have that luxury of you know, having our seniors still have the ability to vote and going, like we talked earlier, going to them as opposed to having them come to us. And so, you know, I guess, you know, I do have reservations about online voting from own personal experiences, that it is easy to be manipulated to vote for, you know, to vote for your neighbors, you know, if you have access to, not to their server, but, you know, into their home to encourage somebody to vote for somebody they may not want to vote for. And so, you know, honestly, I think at the end of the day, if we really want to engage voters, and if we really want to get a level of democracy back, I think we need to, as all politicians on all four levels that we have in this area, just show our voters that they can trust us and bring, I think that's a lot of what we have lost over the last many years, is that apathy that politicians say one thing to get elected and they do another when they are elected. And so I think, you know, to any elected official around this horseshoe or any of the other levels, as long as, you know, I think if we're being true to our constituents and working as hard as we can for them, then I think that will eventually bring people back. But that's all.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm really pleased to see the efforts that you've put into, you know, adding more accessible methods to vote, because I know that, you know, the go-to thing is, well, let's just do it on the internet and then people don't have to leave their homes. But I'm clearly that's not an option at this stage, and I agree with your assessment of that. So I just wanted to, yeah, thank you for the work that you've put into this.
Yeah, thank you. I'd extend that as well. I was really happy to see this report. It has everything I want in it and nothing that I don't, to be honest. The only concern I had was actually raised by Councillor Singh, and that was the sanctity of the drive-through and car voting. So hopefully we can get a report back, or the future council can get a report back, I guess, on the pros and cons of that. But Councillor Chapman has moved this. Those in favor? Oh, sorry, hang on one second. I forgot about this part. Okay, those in favor? And opposed? And Councillor Ioannidis? Councillor Ioannidis is in favor. That carries. Thank you very much. We have one final item, the Dog Designation Appeal Committee review. And Ms. Saunderson will be, oh, there you are. Go ahead if you're ready.
Through the chair, it was requested at a special council meeting earlier this year to review or have some discussions about the dog designation and animal designation appeal committee. Currently members of council, I just want to share the current state about what we've heard to date. The current composition of the committee is members of council. The scheduling of the meetings themselves are on the morning of council meetings, so the intention is that if you're here on Mondays with us, that we can then use your morning and schedule a dog committee hearing, and that the committee runs those decisions and forwards those decisions to City Council for consideration. In some of the discussions with regards to members of council on the committee, specifically, what we've heard in the past is that previously, the committee was comprised of a citizen member, also a member of the Canadian Kennel Club, and they brought some experience with them with regards to dog behavioralist. That committee member has resigned and is no longer a member of the committee, but it was also a component of the previous bylaw. There is some concerns about various degrees of experience and abilities to adjudicate complex matters. So when there are hearings in front of the committee member, there are some times where it's a lawyer against our city lawyer who's here adjudicating, and scheduling generally is a challenge. Some of the considerations that staff have taken in a review of is that the previous bylaw did allow for that appointment. The current bylaw that was approved in 2014 doesn't allow the appointment of a citizen member. So that does leave us at your hands with regards to scheduling. So generally we need three people to attend hearings that allows for quorum. In the case that one person has a conflict, we would be able to maintain quorum for a panel of 2. The bylaw states that hearings should be scheduled within 45 days, that we endeavor to do that. In 2023 and 2024, we were not able to achieve that deadline at all. In one case, the hearing was 105 days. Since 2017, the committee on average hears 5 designations appealed that are annually considered. Appeals specifically relate to designations, whether a dog has been dangerous as potentially dangerous or prohibited, and the committee gets to consider evidence to determine whether or not that designation should apply. One of the things that staff did identify with regards to the committee is that there's no terms of reference or specific procedures outlined in the bylaw. That is something that staff would like to clarify just to make sure that it's just a little bit more secure with regards to the fact that you're making quasi-judicial decisions. So based on the decision today, our staff do plan on preparing a terms of reference with regards to the composition. There are 3 items outlined in the report for options for consideration. One would to be appointing a hearing officer. That's currently used by the AMPS program through bylaw enforcement. It does allow for a significant red tape reduction in the fact that the hearing officer has scheduled meetings already with the city, and they're scheduled a minimum of 2 times per month. There is an option to appoint a mixture of council and citizen members that potentially might allow for a broad basis of consideration, and it could bring somebody with experience to sit in those additional seats. It would allow potentially to reduce some concerns with regards to scheduling and may also eliminate concerns for bias. There is also the option for a third consideration to appoint just citizen members. So the idea that would be similar to property standards, we'd go ahead and appoint 4 to 5 members, and we would schedule them based on that timing. It would also potentially free up the fact that we may not need to use Monday mornings. Based on the discussion today, our hopes for our terms for the next steps would be to develop a terms of reference based on the composition. We would provide some additional training for those members. We provided training at the beginning of this year with regards to the new membership, and we may need to consider amending the budget. The committee does have a current budget of $1,000. In the past, it has been sufficient to address any option provided. The Canadian Kennel Club member was provided an honorarium because she was using it for transportation. She lived significantly further away from the city than she did, but we haven't had to use the budget since that time. So there is a small budget available to the committee, and we would consider what options are appointed, and there might need to be a small increase depending on council's decision. But I open up the floor for discussion if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Mayor Verbenovich.
Thank you. Thanks very much, and thanks to staff for a fairly comprehensive report on this. So just to be clear, with option 1 of using a hearing officer, the only option left to residents if they weren't happy with the decision is not to go to council, but they would have to go to judicial review and incur the expense of lawyers and so on to do that. Is that correct?
That is correct. They would If they do want to appeal the decision, it would be similar to the current practice in the fact that they have counsel in between.
So you're right. So the current practice and what's suggested in options 2 and 3 is that council would have the opportunity to review the decision of the committee, and if they still weren't happy, they could then go to a judicial review. But
That is correct.
but at least there is essentially a no-cost option for appealing it initially.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And I don't know if you can remind me, I believe it was Ann Lawrence that was the rep, right? From
Yes,
the
that is correct.
Humane Society for a number of years. Was she the only rep that we had, or were there others as well?
Since my time in legislative services, she was the only Canadian Kennel Club member that we had. We had Anne not been available, she did have a backup person, but we never actually were able to utilize her.
Okay. And do you know, I mean, here's one where I don't know the history. Do you know why, other than Anne, we haven't historically sort of had any other citizen reps on the committee?
In the previous bylaw, the appointment actually wasn't for an individual, it was for a member of the Canadian Kennel Club. And because Anne met that requirement, council didn't formally need to appoint her directly. Anne always expressed interest on being on the committee, so there wasn't any need to come back to council and find another Canadian Kennel Club rep, but the bylaw didn't identify an individual specifically, so it didn't require appointment in that regard.
Okay. And under the current system, I mean, one of the things that I've always thought that it brings some value to it, particularly when we have new members of council and so on, it does give people the opportunity to develop chairing skills and also understand the quasi-judicial nature of it, because from time to time, we also have quasi-judicial hearings for licensing reviews and so on. So if we went with option 1 or 3, we would lose that ability in terms of building that skill set in members of council. Is that correct?
Apologies. In regards to chairing specifically for quasi-judicial committees, the only other opportunities that would be available to council would be licensing or the court of revision, which potentially will happen later this year. But that is correct. The opportunities for chairing would come through standing committees.
Okay. And then the last question I have is just on the issue of timing. You mentioned 45 days. Is 45 days by law or just by our bylaw? And should that time frame be adjusted if that's a problem, or, when we can provide some further insight on that?
So our bylaw notes that we endeavor to hold the hearings within 45 days. If we don't hold the hearing within that timeline, it at least provides a guidance to somebody who's appealing as to when they think their hearing will be. So generally, when somebody submits an appeal, they don't know when the hearing will be scheduled, so hopefully that gives them some regard. In the case of a designation where conditions would be applied, they would be required to maintain all of the conditions of that decision until the appeal hearing can come. So there is some expense with regards to that.
Okay, thanks. Those are all the questions I have. And Mr. Chair, I'd be prepared to make a motion at the appropriate time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Johnson, sorry I clicked you out there by mistake, but I see you're back in. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Davey, and thank you so much for working on this report for us. I think it's really important, and having been a member of this committee for quite some time, there does need to be some changes made here. I'm wondering with option 3, with members of the community being able to apply for this committee, are we going to have definitions in place in terms of criteria for people from the community to apply? I know you're looking at terms of reference right now, but just wondering your initial thoughts on that.
Sorensen, go ahead.
Through you, the chair, it would be our goal to put a terms of reference in front of council that would have clear criteria about what individuals would make good committee members. There is always the possibility for committee members to come in with some legal experience, and that would help benefit their time on the committee in regards to quasi-judicial or even dog behavioralism. That would help to add to some experience with regards to being a member.
Yeah, I think that criteria will be really important. Thank you so much.
Councillor Michaud?
Thanks. Are we choosing one of these options then today? Is this what the...
That is the hope with the recommendation. You can insert an option, and then staff will take that back the direction and bring forward a terms of reference with the preferred option.
Okay, I'll just kind of add to Councillor Johnston's comments. This is definitely needed. I've been on this committee as well. And I think option 3 looks to be the most viable for this. Thanks.
Yeah, I have a brief comment, but Mr. Mayor, do you want to move your recommendation first?
Yeah, thanks. And I actually was looking to move option 2, which would be councillor and expert citizen members on the committee. And I do that for a couple of reasons. First of all, I think one of the things we've learned from the committee, and I've had the opportunity over the years to sit on hearings as well, both these and licensing hearings. And I do think that there is number one, for members of council, there is a skill set that's developed when we do those kinds of quasi-judicial hearings. Secondly, I think it does give citizens a certain degree of comfort, because pets in many instances are a member of someone's family. And so when these kinds of things happen, they're pretty significant in the lives of a household. And so having people who understand community, understand balancing both sides of an issue, and so on, is important. But I think the third piece, and what we've learned in recent years and in my conversations with colleagues around the Horseshoe, is we're missing the experience of the Anns of the world that sat on the committee in the past. And so I think that in looking with option 2, it would actually bring some experts back onto the committee that would be helpful to council and allow that balance of different ideas to come forward. And I just think it's I think it would be unfortunate on something as important as this that we lose the perspective of council in that dog designation process.
Okay, thank you. Before I go through the queue, just Councillor Deneau, question or comment? Comment, and Councillor Michaud, question or comment? Question? Okay, go ahead.
For option 2 then, how would you go out to get an experienced person to sit on this committee? Would it be application process? Would you post it? Would you go to the kennel club? I don't know, all the above.
Through you to the chair, I think the goal would be similar to recruitment with regards to property standards and the other quasi-judicial committees that require a committee of adjustment as an example. So I wouldn't want to veer terribly from the current nomination committee, but the criteria would be really strict, and we would try to make sure that we reach out to distribution lists that would be able to connect with us. So for those people, our legal services department may have a connection list for distribution for veterinarians or the Humane Society that we could reach out to and make sure that their advertisements are getting to those folks.
Is there, this may be in this report, and if it is, I've missed it. Is there a fee that they would be paid for this, or is this a volunteer? Well, there's no.
So currently, the previous citizen representative was paid $100 based on an honorarium because the travel requirement had to come into place. With the recent honorarium policy approval, I would consider requesting of council to also approve an honorarium that would be similar to property standards so that they would be compensated for their time. Depending on the number of citizen representatives, it could require a small budget increase, but based on the past annual averages, it shouldn't be significant.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I just have a question too, actually, if you could cue back in. Ms. Saunderson, I just realizing that this hasn't always been, to be frank, the most popular committee to find councillors to be appointed to. I'm wondering if there's anything restricting us should committee decide to reduce the members of council from 2 to 1.
Through you, the chair, it is the council's terms of reference, so at the appointment time, if there was a reduction in volunteers, there would have to be a consideration about how many people that we received applications from as well. So council could do the appointment as they saw fit at that time.
Okay, so they could change it if we had difficulty filling
That would be
positions.
correct.
Okay. So I'll have a comment, but I'll let Councillor Dignall go first.
Thank you, Chair Davey, and I've been on this committee since I was elected. I believe a former councillor said to me, "Oh, that's for the rookies." But I will tell you, outside of the first meeting in which Councillor Michaud chaired, I've chaired the rest of them, and I will concur with the mayor that it's allowed me to have the ability to chair a meeting and to really learn some of the more nuances of the city and how to delegate and with meetings and such like that. So I'm comfortable with option number 2. I think it is important to have an expert or two within the committee making a decision, because I'm not a dog person, and we've made some tough decisions over the last couple of years that necessarily didn't feel right, but we were basing on the evidence. And so if we had an extra expert or two to help us guide that decision, I think it would be much more beneficial to the animals and to the owners of those dogs, but also to council as well, that the decision is not just sitting on 3 or 2 elected officials, especially in which some of those some of the appeals that we've received are in our own wards, and so it definitely puts it's a bit of a tricky navigation there. So I'm good with option number 2.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Michaud.
It's a comment, is that okay?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm also good now with option 2. As long as we have someone with a special background as far as dog behavior goes, this has been a challenging committee to be on, and sometimes the decisions that we have to make are it's a family's dog. It's like a family's child for some people, and we have to make those decisions with not having at times the qualified background that we need. So I think option 2 would certainly be a better. Thanks.
Okay, there's no one else in the queue. Before this, I was actually most interested in option number 1. I thought it was respectful but also efficient, but I see that's not the way that committee wants to go on that. That's fine. But I just wanted to clarify, actually, if I could, Ms. Saunderson. So if I was interested in making it 1 or 2, I couldn't move that myself, but does that need to be done now, or could that be done at the time of appointments if there's only one member of council that was interested in sitting on this?
Through the chair, I do have to be a little frank, if you don't mind. I am with you in this respect that it might not be the most popular committee to be on, so my intention at the time would be to consider getting 3 citizen members and 2 members of council, and making sure that 1 council member sat with the citizens and allowing greater flexibility with regards to scheduling. That could be a discussion for the terms of reference, though, so we can bring forward the options and make council available at the time about what type of scheduling would come in play.
Perfect, so we don't have to decide that now then?
We don't.
Okay, excellent. With that then, I guess I don't have an issue with it. So no one else in the queue? 1 second here. Sorry, who moved this? Oh, Mayor Benish moved it. Okay, and those in favor? And none opposed. Councillor Ioannidis?
Favor.
In favor, and that carries. And that also concludes Finance and Corporate Services Committee. We will now go into Special Council, which will take about 5 minutes, Madam Clerk. Yeah, take a 5-minute break.